This is such bush league.
I'm so sick of the Spallina hate.
I'm not quite sure where Hopkins is.
Probably one of the worst losses, ways to lose in the past 20 years of college lacrosse. Welcome back to episode 7 of the Mitchell Pehlke Lacrosse Show on TLN. We have a potentially depressing episode for the Ohio State fans out there. I'm with you. It's my apologies. We'll get into that. We have a packed one. We're talking Ohio State's massive upsets against Notre Dame. We're talking Syracuse win over Hopkins and Penn State versus Cornell, which was potentially one of the best comebacks we've seen in a long time. Mitch's mailbox, start bench cut, the whole entire thing. Dukes, you know, this is probably the most excited you've been for an episode, and I'll just let you take it away. It's something that I wasn't ready to hop on, but,
Look,
you know, we got to face it.
The past couple of weeks, I've been the first to congratulate you guys. Congratulations on beating my Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And I saw you guys picked them on the pick'em graphic, right? Maddie, can we pull that graphic up? We got Mitch and Hoagie both picking.
It's not great.
Oh, you guys did it? You didn't pick
I'll
them?
be honest. I'll be honest. You know, as media members, I feel like we have the job and duty to pick who we think is going to win. You know, a comparison goes to Kurt Herbstreit. Got a legendary player at Ohio State. He's a media member. He can't be a homer. And I feel like that's the role I've been put into. And again, you know, it hurts me to say that I thought Notre Dame was going to win. And I truly felt that. But Ohio State's always going to be from within. We got this up here for a reason.
I'm wearing my Dayton sweatshirt because I represent the school no matter what. I would
Yeah,
never
that's a
pick
sad
against my
university.
school.
I would never
Look,
wear that.
Yeah, and I just want to be the first to say that if I'm going to be scared of the comments, I'd much rather be called a homer than a sellout.
Yeah.
You can't say that, though.
Yeah.
It's not a sellout.
And it's not.
I just did.
No, because you're not looking at it under the right lens. I'm rooting for Ohio State every single week. That's my alumni, Mitch's alumni. We go back every single year. That's a program that we both love and care about, watch every single week. When we're on this show, when we're on Twitter, we're putting the bias of where we played and what we did on the side. Because the minute that you take your bias and you put it online, you lose credibility, you become a clown. You need to be someone who people respect and listen to with their decisions. So, am I embarrassed that I picked Notre Dame? 100,000%. Was I the happiest guy in the world when Ohio State won? Hell yeah, I was, because I'm tired of all this crap everyone online is spewing about how we're the Midwest Delaware and blah, blah, blah. That's 3 wins. That's 3 wins. No, that's 3 wins in 5 years. So when I'm looking this objectively as a media member, and I looked at it both sides, for me, Notre Dame, I found it really hard to believe that Notre Dame would drop 2 games in a row after just losing a tough one to Maryland. You would expect Notre Dame to come out with their hair on fire in the opening game in Arlada Stadium of this year and kind of play with a pulse, which they didn't. And then 2, on the flip side for Ohio State, I've loved what I've seen from this Ohio State team. Besides that week 1 loss to Utah, they have been on fire with a massive win over Virginia, and they've looked great. Granted, they haven't played the best opponents. Besides that, they've won every game in front of them. So for me, I had a question about the validation of seeing the Utah game. The Utah team that hasn't won a game since they beat Ohio State. That's their only win. So I needed to see more validation from Ohio State before I felt truly comfortable
100%.
Uh,
as
a media member picking them moving forward. And that's the reason for the pick. There is no, they're going to try and paint us as you didn't pick. It's an unbiased media pick. I was hoping I was wrong. I was rooting for Ohio State the whole time. As Mitch said, we got the gear on. I got my sweatshirt on.
Media members, son.
Come on.
Media members.
So
You can't have it both ways.
I will not take this
What
slander.
do you think, Kev?
You can't have it both ways, dude. You can't be like celebrating the win when it happens and then also be like, well, we're media members and we're unbiased. You know what I mean?
What would this show mean? Again, this is, I regret picking them because obviously in hindsight, it's not a great look. But what would it look like if we were to come on here and even give pick'ems, even talk about the sport, if we're not going to be in the middle of the road? Like, if we're homers, this is like not a non-credible show.
If my team was 6-1, you wouldn't catch me dead picking against them.
Dude,
I also think people know you guys played at Ohio State. They know that about you. And like,
we're not also like, sorry to cut you off, Kev, but like at the end of the day, I don't think that I would ever be like, I'm a media member. I'd be like, I'm a fan that loves this sport that just happens to have a microphone.
Well, I also think the misconception is that like we're rooting for Notre Dame. The pick is one thing. You're not rooting for Notre Dame to win the game. You're rooting for Ohio State to win the game. The pick is one thing. That has nothing to do with who you actually want to win the game.
Feels like an emotional hedge.
No, it's
it does.
This is Clownville.
This is just Clownville, and this is bait and switch. This is wild.
Yes,
Mitch,
this is what they call. This is the old bait and switch in social media, folks. It's happened time and time again.
I'm telling you. So, now we have bigger sample size of Ohio State. Beforehand, we didn't really know what we got. So now we see it. Notre Dame's got glaring problems. Ohio State looks fantastic moving forward. I'm excited to see them continue to grow on what they've built. And that's all it is. There's really nothing more than that. So anyone other than that is just trying to stir that pot up. That's all I got to say.
Will we see you guys pick against Ohio State any other time this year?
Maybe.
Can we get you guys to confirm that you will not pick against Ohio State for the rest of the year? Can you say this with Buckeye faithful right now?
That.
Please confirm to Buckeye faithful.
Ohio
State. Tuning in right now.
This is such Bush League.
It is
some
Bush
little
League.
Kids in Columbus, Ohio.
It is Bush League.
Take down that jersey.
So what do people? Every other homer, by the way, I see in the comments. AP Desmond Howard picked Ohio State to beat Michigan this year on College Game Day, by the way. And Herbie has picked against Ohio State on multitude of occasions. Picking against and rooting for a team is completely different.
Look,
Dukes is lucky we don't do like MCLA pick'ems.
Because you have to think about
we wouldn't even see Dayton on the sheet.
Mitch, let's think
He's
about
such a squid.
Mitch, let's talk about this on the flip side. If we had picked Ohio State every week and say for some reason we lost, we'd be labeled as clowns, continuing to just put some stuff, not even talking objective. We're on this podcast. We're talking objective lacrosse, real stuff. You want to have the best podcast in college lacrosse? You talk real facts, you talk objectively, and that's what we're going to do week in, week out.
Look, some would say that you're more of a Yale homer this year than Ohio State because you're picking Yale every week, and they got nothing to prove.
I think we're just making way too much talk on the pick'ems. We're here to talk college lacrosse objectively, give real facts, real opinions, just like anyone else in the country. We're going to come here week in, week out, and give you our real thoughts. And if some people don't like it, it is what it is. That's all I got to say.
Well, objectively, Hogs, next week when we have Ohio State at Denver on the pick'em, what are you guys picking?
I'm picking Ohio State.
I truly think Ohio State's going to win that game.
Homers.
No.
Homers.
It's not a homer pick.
It's a bait and switch.
Homers.
Okay.
They struggle.
He's completely lost their credibility.
I'll ask this. Did you see a singular person on this app take Ohio State? A singular person?
No.
Inside Lacrosse didn't even put this graphic.
Brian knows lax on TikTok.
Inside Lacrosse didn't even put this graphic on their screen because everyone picked Notre Dame. So to act like this was a 50-50 pick'em game and we're just going against Ohio State is ridiculous. If you want to face the facts, Ohio State, this was one of the biggest underdogs, I think, in this game in years in terms of like people actually thinking they had a chance. That's just a fact, whether you want to admit it or not. It wasn't like even people were like, oh, I'm going back and forth. If you asked anyone, 10 out of 10, pencil in Notre Dame. That's how it was beforehand. Now we know more facts. Notre Dame's not as good as we thought. Ohio State's much better than we thought. But with the sample size that we had, looking at the game objectively at the point of time, you would think that Notre Dame would win that game based on the results so far this season. And credit the Buckeyes. They won it. I'm hype. We're top 10. We're back. I'm done with all this Ohio State, this, that slander. We're back in the top 10. We're back where we belong. And let's go. That's all I got to say, folks.
The last thing I will kind of touch on is I've bet on this game a lot of years. It's almost always 4.5 to 6.5 goals.
I'm not talking about goal spread. I'm just saying perception of talking to anyone in the media or anyone online. I'm not looking at DraftKings sports bet lines.
Yeah. All right, fair.
But it is, I think at the end of the day, we can get off the heat train here, but for you, Kev, what does this say more about each team? Like, does this prove more with Ohio State or kind of show us less with Notre Dame?
I think it's the bigger story here. I know you guys are Ohio State guys, homers, some might say, but Notre Dame is the bigger story here. That's a massive upset. And to me, it's the same problems. Hoagie, I just heard you say they have glaring issues. It's funny because I said that last week on this podcast and you all blew it off and you said, no, they'll be fine. Chris Kavanaugh will be a fine QB1. There's no issues. It's just they ran into a buzzsaw in Maryland. And now when the same exact thing happens against Ohio State, it's different. Now it's glaring issues. Look, they don't have a quarterback one. They don't have that third attack situated. Chris Kavanaugh is their best QB1, but they don't want to put him behind the net. They don't want him distributing. They clearly want him above GLE, making plays. I made this comparison last year where I said, when you're talking about the draft, Brendan O'Neill is wide receiver 1. Connor Schellenberger is QB 1. Chris Kavanaugh is closer to a wide receiver 1 than a QB 1. He needs someone who can be a distributor, and they don't have that third guy. They started Brock Behrman. They benched Brady McCorney this week. I don't think Behrman's the answer. Devin McClain ended up getting more playing time at attack, but he still was so passive. They don't like to generate from behind the net with their attackmen. They do invert with their midfielders, but they try to do way too much up top with their short stick matchups with their midfielders. To me, I would let Devin McClain try to run the offense from X, see if he can be that Pat Kavanaugh or something close to it. This is a 176-point guy, 6th-year senior. Like, he should be able to manage an offense and then let Chris Kavanaugh run loose the way he likes to be as that number 2 guy, or that guy who's cutting off ball, making plays off ball, diving through the air. That's what Chris Kavanaugh is if you're not going to make him the QB1 of this offense.
Yeah, you saw Chris Kavanaugh started to play more, and I agree with everything Kev just said. I think the most glaring thing for me with Notre Dame compared to last year, even more so than missing a Pat Kavanaugh to be the QB1, is the drop off from midfield 1 to midfield 2.
They're missing Dobson so bad.
Yeah,
so
right.
bad.
Like, last year, like Will Angrick was on midfield 2 last year. And Jordan Faison really came onto his own, but like you still had Dobson, you still had Riley Gray. You were so deep at the midfield position. The drop off right now from Notre Dame's midfield is the most glaring issue for me personally. I do think that Devin McClain stepping into that attack line might be able to figure out some issues. You weren't going to figure that out in the middle of the game against Ohio State. I also want to give all the credit to Ohio State. Bobby Van Buren, if he goes to the draft this year, you're thinking about him being the number 1 defender off the board. He would be for me right now. And
100%.
I think Big Tasty. I thought that what's his name? Richard Delly for Notre Dame played one of the craziest games you could play. He didn't do anything wrong in that game, but Big Tasty made the important saves when he needed them.
He looked outstanding.
That was the story for me.
And for you, Dukes, I think you just kind of heard the insight from Kev. But Dukes, you're a huge Notre Dame fan. You've been riding them this whole year and years prior, as you should have. Do you still think they're a potential national championship contender?
I do. I really don't. Like, I'm buying the stock again. We're talking about 2 1-goal losses, and I bet you if you looked at the odds, they're still going to be top 3. I think that they will. Like, their defense is still good. They still got Will Lynch. They weren't even winning, like being that dominant from the faceoff X. Shout out to Ohio State's guy.
Oldman was 59%.
Right, and there's going to be freshman midfielders at Notre Dame that are really going to have to step up and really build that, like, because you see how much they want to initiate from their midfielders right now, and I think a lot of the freshmen have been less than impressive, and they've really got to start stepping up.
Yeah, I mean, for me, looking at the game too, first off, shout out to Coach Myers and Coach Crane having that defense absolutely dialed. Travis Crane,
locked down,
one of the most underrated and best assistant coaches in college lacrosse. He's had that D unit loaded for years, but it's really showing this year. Big Tasty has stepped up in a huge way. Bobby Van Buren active. Guys like Cullen Brown have been active also. So that defense is staying true to how it is every single year, Mitch, how we played at Ohio State. Buckeye tough on defense. And then on offense, draining the shot clock out, not turning it over.
Yeah,
playing
it's like
our role
style of offense where it's like they're going to slow you down and make you play like Buckeye ball.
Because when I watch Notre Dame, I see glaring issues on offense, just like Kevin Duke said. They're missing that midfield threat that Dobson brought. They're missing that QB1. But also on defense, that game could have been a lot worse on the defensive side. The goalie for Notre Dame was making a ton of timely saves in that game to really keep a couple goals off the board. Marnier has really emerged. What, Dukes?
He had 20 saves.
20 saves. Like 20
Ohio State was freaking whipping it at them. Like, I think in the first quarter they had 15 shots on goal itself. I mean, Ohio State had the recipe for an upset. They were just slinging it early and often, and they said it on the broadcast, and I completely agreed. When you were watching that game go on and on, it felt so much like the Georgetown Notre Dame game last year, and I could not agree more. Ohio State really did make them play Buckeye ball.
They did. And Ohio State, the way that they play it is going to be a recipe to success the rest of the year with the teams they play. They know what it is. They had the perfect storm with 59% of the faceoffs. Big day at a Big Tasty. We're going to play defensively. And as Coach Myers always said, Ohio State, we'd have a play sheet each weekend on Sunday, the day after our game. We'd come on in our film room and go over like our keys of the week. And it would just be get to 11. Get to 11 goals. We're going to win this game. We'd have it on the whiteboard. You get a check or not if we get 11 goals.
Like, this is an insider scoop aspect. You know what's the most interesting aspect? Every time we won a game, we won the ground ball battle. which people don't think about.
4 years.
It was always like that. It was like if we won the game, we won the ground ball battle. I don't think I ever remember losing the ground ball battle and winning the game.
4 years at Ohio State, Mitch, every single time before the game, before we took the field on this given Saturday, Coach Myers would say, win the ground. It would be on our thing. Every single time we won the ground ball battle, we won the game. And every single time we didn't, we lost the game, which was crazy to think. But Ohio State has their DNA. They have the way that they're going to play, and they're going to be a tough out for a lot of teams moving forward because the style that they play fits the Big Ten ball as well. Hopkins, Maryland, Penn State, a lot of the contenders at the top are going to play that slow style just like Ohio State is. So Ohio State is in great shape to make a run moving forward and win a lot of games. I think they're going to be dangerous moving forward. Maryland coming to the Ohio State Lacrosse Stadium, by the way. I'm calling an upset there coming soon.
And Mitchell Pehlke will be broadcasting that game. So
are you, Mitch?
Just watch out.
Wow.
Watch out.
I will say.
I just want to.
Yeah, Dukes, go.
I just want to say two more things about the game. One is when you're missing that QB1, I think it also takes away from what Jake Taylor can do. In the last 3 games, he only has 4 goals. He had 1 against Ohio State. He had 3, I want to say, against Maryland. But they do so much from up top that, like, I don't know if that really fits how he can be most effective in the game. I mean, obviously it worked against Maryland, but it's just something I'm keeping an eye on. And second, Jordan Faison's got to really, like, he's really trying to be like their initiator, and obviously athletically, he might be one of the most athletic, if not the most athletic guy on the field at all times. But I wonder how he's adjusting from coming from the face-off field to the lacrosse field. And second, I think right now maybe Will Angrick is the best player for Notre Dame.
Yeah, I agree.
He was great. He was great. One thing I got to shout out, we've been shouting out 𝐓𝐇𝐄 Big Tasty nonstop, and he deserves it. And especially so because if you go back to that game, that Utah game, he didn't start. So they're undefeated when he's a starter. He's got the second best goals against average in NCAA Division I right now. He's only allowing 5.5 goals per game. And so I think that also says something about Notre Dame because we're talking about 2, as Dukes mentioned, 1-goal losses, and they're against 2 of the hottest goalies, and Logan McNaney and Big Tasty. So, you know, maybe you just ran into a couple buzzsaws if you're Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And I said,
and also too, like the aspect as well is like we talk about that Ohio State Maryland game. That's senior night for the Buckeyes. And that always means a little bit more. So that game's going to be interesting.
Mitch, I said this 2 weeks ago, and I got a lot of laughter for me. And this is another hot take that I'm going to get that people are going to go crazy on. I'm not saying it's going to happen. There is a legitimate chance that Notre Dame can miss the NCAA tournament. And I'll explain to you why as of right now. Notre Dame plays 11 lacrosse games, one of the shortest schedules in college lacrosse. They're 5 games into their 11 games right now. So they have 4 ACC games left, and then a game at a conference game versus Penn, and an at a conference game versus Michigan. Penn and Michigan are 2 of the best defensive teams in college lacrosse in terms of goals allowed and defensively. If the Notre Dame offense doesn't figure out a quarterback and can't figure out how to initiate from the midfield, and they, God forbid, lose one of those 2 games, let's just say they split the ACC and go 2-2, and they somehow lost to Michigan or Penn, there's a legit chance that Notre Dame could be left out of the NCAA tournament. And that's a legit claim with looking at how their offense has looked through the first 5 weeks of the tournament.
I would be shocked.
Yeah, me too.
I do want to see. Their RPI is still high enough right now. Even when I was just interested when we were talking about it. Their odds on DraftKings right now, they have the second best odds still. This doesn't include New Jersey.
I think they're going to make the NCAA tournament. I'm not saying they're not.
I do agree with you. And the Georgetown win, I get it's not. It's not
going to get you into the tournament.
But Georgetown still is going to hold up. They're going to get a couple wins in the ACC, which will hold, like, even if they get 2 or 3. And I don't think that they're going to lose to Michigan.
No, I'm not saying they're going to lose. I'm just looking objectively at how Notre Dame's offense seems to be as stagnant as can be over these last 2 weeks. Penn and Michigan out of conference games are 2 of the best teams defensively. And in those ACC games, you never really know. Virginia's going to give them their best game, even though we think Virginia's the worst team in the ACC. Virginia almost went and beat Hopkins at home 2 weeks ago. Virginia's going to show up to play Notre Dame. So if they don't fix the offensive output, there is a way where down the stretch, given their schedule and their resume, that they could be on the outside looking in.
100%. And I was interested in Notre Dame's offensive efficiency. So I went to the Lax reference where they have the RPI. They're 3rd in offensive efficiency, 6th in shooting percentage. So this is something that, like Kev said, that maybe he ran into like 2 really good goalies. I'm buying the Notre Dame stock. I get why people are selling it. I get why people are going to be like, you're a homer. You wouldn't catch me dead, Mitchell, picking against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, baby.
I also think that the personnel experiment is over now for Kevin Corrigan. He really wanted Brady Picorni to come in and be that star freshman. And now I think, like, okay, that didn't work. It's not Brock Behrman. It's got to be Devin McClain. You know your lineup now. Stick with that and work from here.
Have to, yeah.
And you are right, Hoagie. One more thing is, this is when Hoagie said they could stay out of the tournament. It's what happened when Ohio State beat them in 2021. It was the deciding factor in why they were out. A couple other things, but yeah.
It's really
does history repeat itself?
Small schedule that they play is interesting. How Corrigan does that every year. They start a little later than most. And
let me ask you guys this. This is the last question I want to get. Moving into the next game. What's the plus of the small schedule? I'm in the opposite of I love how Duke has so many more games because it obviously helps the RPI. Kev, do you know what? What is the plus? Just so guys aren't injured?
I don't know. Outside of the 2 cupcakes that I always mention to start the season, they do have a pretty tough out-of-conference schedule. And so I think they just count on that and winning those games being enough. But as we saw in 2022, you drop a few of them and it doesn't go your way. I honestly would go the Duke route, and I'd try to load up my schedule a little bit more.
Yeah, I think playing more games, whether you play top 25 teams, Duke plays a mix of great top 20 teams, but also a mix of easy wins. And they play 18 games or something like that. So objectively, more games, more eyeballs, more ability to look better, et cetera, et cetera.
If we're going to talk about one freshman that needs to step up for Notre Dame, then that's the last thing I'll say. Matt Jeffrey, freshman midfielder. 3 games now, Georgetown, Maryland, Ohio State that he came into. 0 goals, 0 assists. 0-for-9 shooting.
Yes.
Wow. He was the number 1 recruit coming in.
And I think he had, I want to say, Kev, do you remember, was he the one that when Notre Dame had their last possession, he threw it away?
Yes. He had the last pass in the past 2 games. In the Maryland game, he made a nice pass to Kavanaugh. That was the kick save by McNaney. This one, he did try to make a pass to Devin McClain, and it was kind of a bad pass and turnover.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. That's all I have.
Interesting.
Hey, congrats, guys.
Thank you. Thanks, dude.
Congrats. I'm glad it paid off for you guys.
All right, next game. We got 𝐓𝐄 over Hopkins. Did we see this one coming initially? Kev, give us your initial thoughts, and let's work our way around the horn.
Yeah, I was not surprised. I picked 𝐓𝐄 in this game. I think that is one of the best rivalries of all time.
Yes.
Obviously, when you're coming to the Dome, they're going to have that home field advantage. It sounded like it was rocking, especially after the hidden ball trick. The Joey Spallina hidden ball trick. That
crazy.
If there's one place,
if you're Hopkins, what do you do? Spallina had that in his stick for a good 5 seconds too, and the fact that Stout didn't know it was right there, what are we doing?
I don't know. Stout didn't have a great game, I thought.
Yeah, I don't know. I think initial thoughts though, is this a big word for Hopkins or with both? What are you laughing at?
Time out. Can we please just rewind to what Mitch said? He goes, "Did anybody see this coming?" And pull the graphic up right now.
Everyone had 𝐓𝐄.
Everyone had 𝐓𝐄.
Wait, did we pick them?
Everyone picked 𝐓𝐄.
Everyone
shit! I think I got it confused to your pick'ems, Kev.
Oh,
wait, did we? Oh, maybe I was looking at the wrong one.
No, everyone picked 𝐓𝐄.
TLN pick'em was definitely not because we have Diggs who had Hopkins. Someone else had Hopkins.
I was looking at our pick'ems.
Yeah. I thought we all picked 𝐓𝐄. I might have been looking at the wrong one, but I did have 𝐓𝐄 in this.
I think.
Yeah, I did have 𝐓𝐄 in this one as well. I think the thing for me with 𝐓𝐄 was we talked about at the end of the game who was going to be their guy, and then the last time we kind of saw 𝐓𝐄 against Harvard, where it didn't seem like anyone was going to step up. You had everybody stepping up, and every time Hopkins responded, Syracuse came down and they kind of ended that game on that 3-0 run, I want to say, and that was really obviously the difference maker in that one. I know, Kev, I saw on Twitter you weren't really impressed with Spallina's performance per se, and was that what I was saying? And
no, you're reading it backwards. I'm so sick of the Spallina hate, to be honest. It doesn't matter.
Why do you think he gets so much though?
I think that people don't understand his game. I think people think, if you're the star player, if you're the number 1 guy, you need to be Connor Schellenberger and dodging from X and beating anybody, or Brendan O'Neill bullying. Syracuse is on offense, a box lacrosse team playing field.
Yes.
It's a ball movement offense. And when you look at the way that he passes the ball, the way he finds skip lanes, the way he throws spot feeds, he's so quick. He thinks 2 passes ahead. The whole offense. People were saying Scott Smith had him in jail. I disagree completely. He knows it's not a good thing if he's going up one-on-one against Scott Smith. Scott Smith is going to take his candy every time. But he can beat you other ways, and it's with his passing, and he was incredible creating assist opportunities.
Yeah.
I mean, how about that? How about that assist to Owen Hiltz cutting down the left hash and just found him, placed the ball perfectly right where Owen Hiltz needed it, right on his stick, puts it in the back of the net. Owen Hiltz played amazing, I thought, that entire game. And that is, you're right about the ball movement and Spallina knowing his game, but that also goes back to when we talked about, that actually I sometimes think hurts Syracuse when it is that 1 goal deficit and what we were talking about, where you need someone to go beat him. It's like, who is that for Syracuse? Now, everyone stepped up in these moments for them. And I think it's honestly going to have to be, I think, Sam English. But that's kind of the conclusion I came to.
He's their most dynamic guy.
Exactly. And that's not a shot at Spallina by any means. He gets you the first 10, 11 goals. If you just need English to be like, go beat someone, I think he's the guy. Maybe Hiltz, but I don't know. Just because Hiltz is a 5th-year guy? I don't know.
Well, Hiltz had 4 goals, 2 of them assisted by Joey Spallina in the 4th quarter. Both of those assists, Scott Smith wasn't fast enough on Spallina's hands. It's not like Spallina broke his ankles or bowled him over or ran right by him. He just made a really fast decision and a perfect pass. And I think that's just a completely underrated skill, his IQ and his ability to pass with anticipation and see where the offense is going and the flow of the offense. He just understands that at such a savvy and extreme level. And Scott Smith, if you ask me, he had a good game one-on-one against him, but let's go to that first goal. What happened? The Dwan goal. Why are you triple teaming? Why is Scott Smith leaving Joey Spallina to triple team a long pole who's spinning around? And you leave Joey Spallina wide open. And then a lot of people were saying hidden ball trick, whatever. That was the juice play of the year so far, if you ask me.
I will say I was super impressed with how
that's high praise.
No, it was great.
I mean, that seemed electric. I was about to say it in the beginning. If there's one place I could choose to be this entire lacrosse season so far for 10 seconds, it would be the 10 seconds while that was happening and afterward. That would probably, my mind would have been blown.
Yeah, that was awesome. I think for me, the biggest take, I was super impressed with how Syracuse finished that game. I think notoriously in the past, Cuse hasn't finished games well in previous seasons. And even this year, they started out so hot against Harvard early on with that 5-goal lead and kind of blew it late. When Hopkins tied that game at 10, for them to end that game on a 3-0 run was super impressive for me. Everything you guys mentioned was 100% correct. But for me moving forward, I think I still need to see more out of both teams. I'm not quite sure where Hopkins is. I think I thought a lot better of Hopkins a month ago or 3 weeks ago than I do now in terms of them being a legit contender. I don't know where they fall anymore. I think they're just a hair below. And for Cuse, I want to see them continue to build on this. I know Cuse, I've been hard on them in the past, but I'll tell you what, they always have that one win that kind of reels you back in, and then the talk starts coming back up again. So I got to see a little more at Cuse before I pump the bandwagon. But Dukes, you were right on it a couple weeks back. You're like, they'll be fine, not worried. Moving forward, we'll see how they play. Interesting game. I think they play Colgate in 2 weeks. That would be a fun game in the Dome.
That'll be a battle.
Yeah. So
one interesting dynamic.
No offense to Hoagie, but they're playing Manhattan this week. Yeah. This reeks
on
of
Tuesday.
Joey Spallina 10 points. Yeah, Joey Spallina 10 points.
And that's what people will say. That's all people will say.
But
Notre Dame, I mean, Syracuse is going to win 22-7.
Yeah, they're just going to come at me in the comments. Yeah, I mean.
Interesting dynamic from this game, though, was
Colgate's also going to be an over game. That game's going to be like
22-19.
Yeah. Finn Thompson didn't play in that game. He was injured. And Trey Deer started at attack. And I thought Deer was amazing. He's made so many gritty plays on the crease. Any rebound, he'd poke it out, get a ground ball, renew a possession. He had one on a ride where he kind of poked it out last second, and Syracuse was able to get the ground ball on the defensive end. So many gritty plays by him. I love him in the starting lineup. I think the world of him, and it stinks that they're so loaded that he kind of gets lost in the midfield shuffle. I love him starting attack.
When we first started the show too, when we were talking about Hopkins, and I remember Mitch was like, all the wins that they've had early in the season, I was very hesitant because I'm like, there might be better teams out there that might not have the same opportunities that they had right off the bat. Now, when you look back at their schedule, there's a lot. I'm still don't know what to think of Johns Hopkins at all.
No,
like,
I completely agree.
Denver win. Denver's like not that good. Towson, they were ranked going like when they played, not 1-goal win, not that good.
Virginia, we've seen what they are.
Georgetown, 1 goal to Virginia. It's like Loyola by 1. I don't know. Providence beat Loyola by 1. So it's like, what can you really make of this game? But I will say one thing that every Hopkins fan has to be excited about. Now, I'm going to tell everyone personally, I'm not, for some reason, and I know it's the wrong take. I'll be the first to say it. I'm not the biggest Russell Melendez guy. I don't know what it is. Every time I'm just like, I can't get in on him. And he scores 4 goals right in my face. I do not know why I can't buy his hype. But I'll tell you one player's hype that I am buying. Charlie Eiler. Yeah. I think he is a sophomore stud for Hopkins, and they're going to have to do anything they can to get that guy on the field when Melendez gets back. I actually think that there's a world where he might be the better fitted attack.
He could be. And Hopkins is not the most talented team out there. As we've seen now, I don't think they're in that elite tier 1 of teams, but they will be battle tested after their schedule that they play week in, week out. The Big Ten race is going to be awesome, in my opinion. Yeah. Maryland, Ohio State, Penn State, Hopkins. Those 4 teams play so similarly where they don't really have like this one major star that's going to like take over the whole game.
Yep.
They play their styles. They play slow, close. I think we're going to be in for a lot of great games in the Big Ten. Rutgers is really bad, but besides that, Michigan, they've won 2 straight Big Ten tournaments, so you can't count them out till their season's over.
I think conference play is going to be exciting really all around. And obviously, you know, with Big Ten potentially being the most dominant, like laid out.
Right now, you could argue the Big Ten's 5-4 over the ACC right now.
We can get into that next episode. We want to keep this thing flowing here. Penn State over Cornell. I mean, probably one of the worst losses, ways to lose in the past 20 years of college lacrosse. Penn State scoring 5 in the final 2.5 minutes in plus overtime. They win 13-12. I remember watching. I clicked Inside Lacrosse scores, and it said like what 8-12, and I'm like, oh, Cornell wins.
Mitch, with 2:30 left,
Cornell wins. I'm like, that's it. And then I remember Hoagie texted me. He's like, "Did you see that game?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "Penn State won." Crazy though.
Yeah, that game was wild. Insane. I mean, that penalty at the end. The Cascaden penalty.
Kid.
Cornell. Listen, I love Cornell. I'm buying all the stock on them, but I love Penn State. So these are 2 teams that I absolutely love moving forward. Battle in this game. Cornell really gave it away. If they don't call that penalty, they win that game. But
I thought it was the right call, though.
It was the right call, 100%. Yeah. Just the situation, which stinks, is like the chances of giving all those goals up. But I was super impressed with Penn State. Whether you say they should have lost this game or not, they won this game, and they won this game without 3 of their top 6 players on the team. Yeah. I was high on them before, going up to Ithaca, winning that game. Colby Baldwin at the Faceoff X is one of the most underrated faceoff guys in the country. He's a weapon moving forward. You don't have a guy like Trainer, and you still get that win. I'm super impressed with them, but both teams, I think, forward are going to be completely formidable to make championship weekend, in my opinion.
Yep.
Yeah, I trust Penn State way more than Cornell. To me, this was a classic case of the student versus the master, or where Tambroni just outcoached Cornell and Busick in this game. Cornell was undisciplined with the penalties. You mentioned the helmet to helmet where Penn State scores 3 man-up goals on a non-releasable penalty to tie it up. But how about the penalty in the final seconds so that Penn State starts with the ball in overtime? Yep. And then one decision I absolutely hated in this game was with 1:07 left in the game. Cornell won a faceoff, got a timeout with their backup faceoff guy, and they decide to give the ball to CJ Kirst up 12-11. They're trying to just kill clock. He only kills 14 seconds. I love CJ Kirst. Think the world of him. I think he's the best lacrosse player in college right now. I don't think he's the best athlete on Cornell's roster. You have a football player on your roster, and Hugh Kelleher, you're trying to burn clock. Give him the ball. Let him run around. I really didn't like that decision. I think it's indicative of Cornell's save us, CJ syndrome, where they just look to CJ Kirst. And to me, you look at Penn State, as Hoagie mentioned, down 3 of their top players, including Matt Trainer, their star. They were the better team. Honestly, I think this is going to stick with them. I think Penn State is a team of destiny now. And I think that this is going to be super inspiring for them moving forward.
And I agree with you, Kev, too, 100% with Cornell, of biting them in the butt in the future, of being like too much of like they rely too much on like CJ save us. And at some point, you know, they were lucky to come back against Richmond last week. This weekend they lost. So moving forward, they need to find someone else on that team to be able to flow that offense through, where it's not just like anytime they need something, all right, well, CJ's got it, because that's not going to work out moving forward.
One more thing I just want to finish up with is I think Jack Frassione is one of the more underrated goalies.
Yes,
in
we've been
10.
saying this.
But let me just finish this off. He had 4 saves in a win. He played one of his worst games of his career in a win, which I think is going to speak volumes later on in the season, getting this game out of the way and kind of finding his groove again. So
yeah, 100%.
Penn State, Ohio State, Sunday night, 2 weeks. Big Ten Lacrosse, 7 p.m.
Can't wait for that.
Massive.
Conference play soon to be back.
Yep, I know you guys are going to be rooting for the Nittany Lions.
Hell no.
Other notable results. Clap it up for Yale. Josiah, I know you're a subscriber out there at the Mitch Pehlke Lacrosse Show, so thank you for that. First win of the year over Denver. Was I the only one to pick it on Pick'ems? Was it Dukes and I?
Dukes had
on it.
Yeah, 100%.
Mitch, I know you're the Yale guy this year. Dukes, what was the lead there? How did you know to pick Yale?
That's the Pehlkenator. He listens to his father.
I think Yale was one of those teams that needed to find the W. They needed any way to find the W.
People still know they're not a bad team.
I haven't been impressed with Denver to begin with at all.
Okay.
If you looked at it was one of those Virginia Hopkins games. When I'm big at looking at the lines, the go ahead spots. When you look at Virginia at their current form was a 1.5 point dog to Hopkins. That screamed to me okay, Virginia will kind of come back to form a little bit, if that's what the books are thinking. And that's what I thought about Yale this week. But they kicked their ass.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wasn't even close.
15 to 10.
How about Fairfield?
Yeah. I mean, can we harp on them real quick?
Undefeated.
Fairfield, the longest winning streak, 7-0 right now. Let me go down their schedule real quick. The likelihood of them going undefeated could very well happen. Next game they play Hampton, W. Drexel, W. Stony Brook, W. Hofstra, W. Delaware, W. Shout out Duncan Barnes. Towson, W.
Monmouth, W. I think they're running the table. I think
they're going undefeated. I'm calling it now. Is there any question out of you two?
I think it always is.
2 losses is the most I see.
I mean, obviously right now, current form, I don't see it. I mean, they're playing phenomenal ball. I always think the CAA, when you're talking about a gritty conference, one of my favorite tournaments, conference tournaments, it's always a slugfest.
It is.
You could be number one. I remember Hofstra for so many years entering the tournament number 1, and it just being in an absolute war with teams like Towson, UMass when they were in it. So, yeah, do I think Fairfield's good enough to run the table? For sure. But the CAA is one of those muck-it-up conferences, and we know Towson obviously has the talent to figure this thing out and maybe compete with Fairfield.
Also,
and I'm not overlooking Delaware at all, the reigning CAA champs. And they're also they're taking their butt kickings. They got trounced by Maryland. They got beat pretty bad by Penn. I think they're going to be the more battle-tested team when they meet.
They got the big game this week. Delaware versus Towson down here in Baltimore, Maryland. So we'll see what ends up happening.
Also, how many times can Colgate continue to put up 19, 20 goals in a week? This is their 4th or 5th game in a row that they've scored at least 19 goals.
It's crazy.
At what point does it cool down?
They were on upset alert. They were losing 14-11 in the final quarter, and they ripped off 7-8 straight goals.
There might be the biggest mystery in
had
Division
12
I.
points.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Player of the week.
It's crazy. Colgate
Sullivan
putting up 19. Harvard with another impressive win over Michigan, 14-11. Let's talk Loyola real quick. Can't catch a break.
They cannot.
What's going on? Are they the best, worst team in Division I right now?
Yes.
I mean, anytime. They're falling to powerhouses. I mean, you lose 1 goal to Maryland, 1 goal to Hopkins, 1 goal to Providence. I mean, you're talking about blue bloods right there.
Providence powerhouse. He snuck that in there.
Snuck it in there. So back. Penn beats Nova. Princeton beats Rutgers in the Battle of New Jersey. I think no real shock there. Games next week. Let's chat on those real quick. Hopkins versus Denver. Cornell versus Princeton. Richmond versus Duke. Virginia versus Maryland. Michigan versus Notre Dame. I'm kind of excited for another slate. I felt this past week wasn't the best slate. We're kind of back to an elite slate. A couple Sunday games in there with the Buckeyes, but I'm excited for this Saturday. And we'll obviously talk about those more in next week's episode. But Dukes, why don't you take it away here with this potential interview we have coming on? Introduce the fans real quick.
All right. So last weekend, I said some things about the men from West Point. Okay. Made some comments about how Army would not be a better matchup in the national championship than Maryland versus Notre Dame. I even went as far to say that they'd be a Cinderella story, just like the gentleman at Fairleigh Dickinson or St. Peter's. Maybe we could show the people that clip right now. It got some people online really upset, including my coworker at Barstool, Captain Cons. Shout out Captain Cons. Captain Cons.
Support the troop.
He's a troop. He's a former co-host of the military podcast, 0 Block 30 at Barstool, current co-host of the Bold American podcast. Former Army football player. He's also a mega Army fan. Loves the sport of lacrosse. And some people took exception to my comments, including him. He even went as far to respond to TLN's tweet. And he said, pull it up right now if you can, Matty Ice. He said, if you guys need someone to come talk Army in a competent manner, please let me know. Dukes barely has enough brain cells to remember to breathe. I do remember the last time that Army made the Final Four, which was 40 years ago. So we got him on to talk Army lacrosse, if they would be a Cinderella story, and to talk about his comments about me barely having enough brain cells to remember to breathe. So it was a fun one. So let's go over to Captain Cons.
We got Captain Cons on the scene. You know, Twitter's been waiting for this. I think Mitch Pehlke, the Italian, has been waiting for this in person a little bit. And we've been seeing the beef on Twitter. The Army to Fairleigh Dickinson, and we got the captain here. Cap, give the fans a little intro about yourself firsthand. And what's kind of the comparison? Do you have any affiliation with Army?
Is that a real question?
The fans don't know, and I don't know either.
No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. No, so I graduated from Army. I actually never played lacrosse a day in my life, but when I got to West Point, outside of the football team, the lacrosse team were some of my closest friends at school. So I just dove headfirst into our lacrosse program. And perhaps because Dukes is only like 16 years old, he doesn't realize this. Army's had a really good lacrosse program for a really long time. So hence, I've been a very, very strong fan of our program for quite some time now, over 2 decades worth of time. And I know Dukes over here at Barstool Sports. I host Bold American, our military and veteran podcast. And for 8.5 years, I co-hosted the 0 Block 30 military and veteran podcast. And now we've rebranded and gone a new direction with Bold American. So doing that over at Barstool, among other things. But yeah, no, I am a diehard Army lacrosse fan. I have just the utmost respect for that program, for Coach A and what he's done, for Coach Emmer, Jack Emmer, legend of the game before Coach A. So, when I see, it's one thing to be misinformed, but Dukes, he's an intelligent guy when it comes to lacrosse.
He's an interesting cat.
He knows the landscape of college lacrosse. So for him to say things about Army and compare us to some Cinderella darling, it one is just factually inaccurate. And 2, it feels like a personal attack to me because prior to seeing that, I'm like, what is my guy Dukes doing? I thought we were boys. So here we are.
Was I misinformed or were you just misled about Army lacrosse? Because let's be real. I'm not saying that the lacrosse equivalent was Fairleigh Dickinson. It's closer to San Diego State.
There he's backtracking here, Cap.
No, Fairleigh Dickinson. It's the most known Cinderella run in all of college basketball. That's what I said. Any Patriot League team that makes it to the Final Four nowadays is a Cinderella run in lacrosse. That's a fact. I mean, what Army?
That's another. I think he's just doing it for clicks right now.
No, you think Army's 2 Final Fours are important? It's when 8 people were in the tournament.
I'm not even talking about that. We don't even need to go back that far. Let's just keep it within the last 5 years, 10 years. If you tell me a team that is perennially in the top 20, how is a top 20 team a Cinderella regardless of the conference they come from? This isn't the Patriot League football. This is Patriot League lacrosse. Patriot League lacrosse has plenty of great players and teams.
They do, but it's a 1-bid league. It's a 16-team tournament. 10 teams have ever won the NCAA championship. So any team that's outside of those 10 teams is most likely going to be a Cinderella run. Loyola was in 2012. UMass was in 2006. Delaware more recently. Towson. All great teams.
I don't understand how you can say a top 20 team, again, regardless of what league they come from, how that's a Cinderella. Maybe we have different definitions of Cinderella.
Maybe, but if you're in the top 20, you could also miss the NCAA tournament. There's 16 teams, like Manhattan, beating Maryland would be like the Fairleigh Dickinson story.
100%.
That would be like winning
That's what
one
I was
game.
Say, Dukes, if like a playing team went far.
Right. And in this format, I was just making like more of it's a Cinderella run. Now, Army's, I will take it back. Comparing them straight up to Fairleigh Dickinson was disrespectful. I was just trying to use the most known Cinderella story. They are more like San Diego State. Great program, finally broke through.
Cons, if I'm not mistaken, 2 years ago, they were in the quarterfinal. They were number one at some point last year, and they're currently number 3 in the nation.
Can we also...
Yeah, 2 years ago, we're a split second away from going to OT with Penn State and probably beating them in overtime to get us to Memorial Day weekend. Now, credit to Penn State. They lost, Army lost that game, but we were right there on the cusp. And then, yes, James, as you mentioned last year, for a 2-week period, we were number 1 in the country. They don't just say like, oh, you know what? We really like Army. They sure are nice guys. We'll rank them number 1 for a couple weeks just to make them feel good. No, they earned the number 1 ranking. Army isn't some out of the box lacrosse program. Dukes, I know, seriously, like you're 16 years old. You don't understand. But like every year in, year out, they are a good program.
No, I agree. I mean, no, they were number 1 in the country last year. What were they ranked going into the tournament? They didn't make it because it's a 1-bid league in the Patriot League, and anybody that makes a run in it is a Cinderella story. If it's they got to expand the tournament. In my opinion,
now you're talking about something else. Now
right, I'm with you. And until they expand it, I think that any team that makes a run in the Patriot League is a Cinderella story. That we might have different definitions of that, but that's just my opinion. Loyola won the championship in 2012. They were one of the best teams in the country, and I still looked at them as a Cinderella story.
Can we quickly talk about the second part of your take, though, Dukes? Because the first part was that it would be a Cinderella run. Let's just say, hypothetically, they do make it to the national championship. The second part of your take was that no one would care. You said there'd be 10 viewers.
And let me be the first to say that was
wrong.
That was an emotional take in saying that I still feel like Maryland Notre Dame would be the best matchup on Memorial Day weekend.
I have a question for you, buddy. What was the highest attended regular season game last year in the country?
Cons. If we're talking Army Navy, no shit. That's the best rivalry. Like in football too.
Jesus Christ. Doesn't it stand to reason if one of those teams is then in the national championship, they're going to travel pretty well and they're going to sell more tickets?
100%. But do you not think that Maryland and Notre Dame will as well? I think that in person atmosphere.
Talking to you is like saying 2 + 2 is fish.
No.
I also think though, if Army
I took it back. I said Memorial Day Monday with Army in it would be electric.
If Army made the Final Four or the national championship game, every single fringe fan who's just there for the lacrosse experience is going to root for Army in that game.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because they're going to have the majority of the crowd on Memorial Day, of all things, Memorial Day, national championship. That crowd's going to be all Army, besides unless you're a fan or played for the other team.
You know who's going to come back? You know who's going to come back to that game? All of the Army lacrosse players who then served in combat, who lost legs in combat, who were, wounded in combat. They're going to be there on the sidelines, and I dare anybody to Cap them on that day.
I was so
kidding me.
I love it.
I was so wrong about that.
And oh, by the way, that Army-Navy game, that was the highest attended game. And there's some Hopkins people like, oh, we had 100 more people in the week after. No, they didn't. Hopkins just got upset that they didn't have that under their belt, and they made up stats. But that's another thing. Not only was it the highest attended game, the weather that day, because I was there, bud, it was 45 degrees and raining, and it was still the highest attended game. What does that tell you about those fan bases? So I don't care. Yes, this is a sport, as you mentioned, only 10 teams have ever won the national championship. Absolutely. This sport is just completely overall dominated by the quote unquote blue bloods of the sport. But that doesn't mean that if somebody else is in the game, that all of a sudden, nobody cares. People will care.
I agree.
It's a good story.
Army's a great story. I got carried away with how important I thought the Maryland Notre Dame game would be. Rematch, how tight the games have been over the years. Notre Dame going for the three-peat. Notre Dame's fan base also equally travels. I mean, we saw Maryland and Notre Dame fans had 12,000 people down in Atlanta, and that's not like in Baltimore or anything. So I think that speaks volumes about those fan bases. But no, I was completely wrong about Army on Memorial Day weekend. So many people would go, and I'd actually go as far to say I slept on it for a week. I think it could be the most highly attended national championship game.
Is this what he's usually like?
That's a big 180 from 10 viewers.
Is this what he's usually like?
I don't think
guy
that
just almost blew a blood vessel.
Viewers,
and now he's like, I might be wrong.
Viewers to people in attendance, I think it would be very highly attended.
Think so?
Game. Yes.
We know.
You think people might tune in to watch that one on TV as well?
I mean, the most watched NCAA lacrosse game ever was Notre Dame Duke 2023, 720,000.
The veterans, Army on Memorial Day, the troops.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That number might be.
Navy has played in 2004. I don't know how many people tuned in for that one, but I know that at the time it did have the most highly attended game.
You know what else, Dukes? We would be able to skew the numbers because we would have the Armed Forces Network, which is the television station that's all over the world, that is watched by all the military all over the world. We would have all of those numbers as well because everybody deployed would be wanting to watch that game as well.
I'm man enough to admit I was wrong. I could put my hand up and say I was wrong about that. But I also think, do you think Armies should be considered a blue blood?
I mean, I don't know if you can make that argument.
Because we're bragging about
a smaller sport.
Right, and we're bragging about, not bragging, but Hoagie's talking about the quarterfinals 2 years ago. That was a great win against Maryland. You guys did barely lose to Penn State. I think if you guys made the Final Four, it would be you guys are on the scene. I think you guys would have been a Cinderella story that year. Everybody would have talked about you guys. You guys would have been the tournament's darling.
But Dukes, basically what you're saying is you're either a blue blood or a Cinderella. It's like
basically
there's got to be something in the middle, though.
It's not a big enough tournament. I get it, but there's just not a big enough tournament. Like just to make it to the quarterfinals, which people want to say is like an accomplishment, that means you won one tournament game. That means Army since 1971 has basically won 5 tournament games. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's just. I do think I'm
not here to argue with whether or not Army's a blue blood. I'm talking about the inaccurate statements that you made last week. That's what we're here talking about.
I'm not going to
litigate Army's lacrosse history or the fact.
But I think that's a Cinderella story. That's a Cinderella story.
Kat, you ever walk around the office and you just want to see this guy and put him in a headlock?
And Collins, by the way, I respect you because you're an actual fan of your school. They went to Ohio State and they picked against Ohio State.
Kat, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. If Army's ranked 19th and they're playing Notre Dame that's ranked 2nd in the nation, as a person in media, are you still picking Army?
I'm going to tell you something. Everything else comes second place to me. I don't care what it is that I'm doing in my life. It's Army over everything. I don't care what the storyline is. I don't care what my job is.
Is that because, serving the country and it's bigger than the university?
Wait, say that again?
Is that because, serving the country and it's bigger than the university? It's not like Ohio State, you do your 4 and you're out. It means more to you.
No, because I wouldn't say anyone's alma mater, it means more because we then serve the country on top. I'm saying that.
Well, how does it make Hogan and I look where we're talking about this is essentially the big
root against your alma mater?
No, it's not rooting against. It's not rooting against.
It's not rooting against. We had a decision. We did pick'ems. Who do you think's going to win? I thought Notre Dame was going to win.
Oh, you're saying who do you think's going to win the whole thing? And that's
essentially.
We're
Ohio
rooting for.
Ohio State played Notre Dame last weekend, and we had to pick who's going to win, and they picked Notre Dame to beat Ohio State.
Oh my God, I would never.
Never.
No.
See the sweatshirt.
But no one's ever going to look at you like
Cons. You're doing pick'ems. You're an Army football guy. Army's playing Ohio State on Saturday. You're gonna sit as a media member in front of everyone and say Army's winning that game?
1,000%.
He did it this year. They played Notre Dame this year, and he was like, "Oh, Army's going to win it." Let me tell you why.
See, I like the confidence, but as a media member, you got to have the credibility.
As a media member, Cons,
it doesn't
you
matter.
can't be a homer.
No, it doesn't matter because guess what? I'm an Army guy before I'm a media member, and that's what matters most in my heart. I would never go against my heart.
You know, the saddest problem about this whole thing is Dukes thinks he's a part of the Notre Dame lacrosse team when he went to Dayton. You got any tips for him?
At least I'm still wearing my school stuff. I would never pick against Dayton.
What do you see
Take down that jersey, Mitch.
Dukes, how many times have you given up on Dayton on Twitter saying the season's a wrap this past year?
No comment.
Yeah, exactly, Mitch.
I saw Dukes in tears when Dayton won a conference, or not a conference, excuse me, a tournament game. So that's true love. So you can't fault him for, rooting for his Flyers. That's also my dad's alma mater.
There we go. Cons, I also want to say that before the Army hate started, I do need to get this in front of you. I said that I think that Army is really good, and I expect them to run the entire table this year.
I mean, bold statement saying the number 3 team in the country is really good, but
this was after the Yale game. So this is when they were number
all right,
10, 11,
15th or 12th, something like that. Yeah.
Right. Cons, you're gonna be at that UNC game at Mikey in a couple weeks.
Weather permitting, because it's not really conducive to go when the weather's crappy and you have a 1.5-year-old. So we'll see, but that is the plan.
We're seeing live action of Dukes actually crying after that conference win. When you first met Dukes, what were your initial thoughts? Like, does this guy need clinical help?
No, I didn't think that. I thought he was a really nice guy, and he's one of those guys that you ask him to do something and he doesn't ask any questions, and he probably should ask questions for some clarification. But he just goes. He just does it. He's loyal. He's a good guy. So I got nothing negative to say about Dukes now that we've cleared up this little kerfuffle on his ill-advised statements.
The beef is squashed.
The beef is officially squashed.
I take back some things that I said, but I'm sticking by that.
And that's what we do here.
Dukes, what do you think about Coach Albarisi?
Amazing coach. Amazing coach. Probably a top 10 coach in the country. Not on the hot seat.
No, I think that the seat is Antarctica for him.
Yeah. I pretty much would say that,
he's such a good guy.
I would almost put him in
he's a legend.
I'd pretty much put him in the unfireable category.
100%.
Yeah. I don't know how many coaches you could say that about. Maybe Tillman's the only one. Corrigan. There's only a couple coaches I'd say that about.
Yeah, 100%. Cons, I want to leave you with this. Talk to us about your thoughts on Army Lacrosse this year. Obviously, we talked to them. Obviously, not a Cinderella, but do they actually have what it takes to make it to the national championship?
So what I think they're doing right now with how dominant they're playing is they're instilling a lot of confidence in themselves, right? So they're not eking out wins. And when you get into that conference play, Patriot League can be tough, regardless of what Duke says. Patriot League can be tough. So going into that with as much confidence as they have, because when they beat Rutgers, Rutgers was ranked. When they beat Yale, Yale was ranked. And not only did they beat Yale, they just embarrassed Yale. I mean, I think they have not the top, but definitely one of the top goals against number in the country right now. We got a goalie that's playing out of his mind.
Yep.
We have the best freshman in the country, the highest scoring freshman in the country. And we have weapons from every different angle. Like right now, it's hard to look at a game on our schedule and think, oh, we're going to win that. Like they absolutely can run the table. And I think the best thing that happened last year, getting a taste of being number one. And I really don't put too much stock into that. It's cool for sure as a program to be able to say we're ranked number one in the country. It's great for the program. It's great for the school. I think that was awesome. But what I also think was good was losing in the Patriot League tournament last year and kind of falling short of where they felt like they could have been. So now they got that behind them. You learn from it. And I mean, honestly, they just don't look like they're slowing down anytime soon. We got Lehigh this weekend and then UNC, if my schedule is correct. So that I think these next few weeks are going to tell us a lot, because I think BU's in that mix as well.
Yeah, in between them.
BU's always been a nemesis for us. So I think that the next 3 weeks we're going to really know who Army is as a team and what they might be able to do. But I think they learned a lot of lessons from last year. You got a lot of guys in this team from last year's team, and I don't think they want to feel that again. So I'm excited for the remainder of the season, but 1 week at a time.
Cons, I got one more for you. I got one more quick for you, Cons.
Yep.
Army football guy. Army has those special uniforms every year that they debut in the Navy football game.
Yeah.
Which Army uniform would you like to see the lacrosse team debut at some point in the future, if you could pick out?
If so, you're saying one of the ones that we did?
Yeah, like my personal favorite. I love the big red one they wore a couple years back. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Also, I'm not sure what the other one is. I think it was the green one with like the donkey with the yellow patch on the side. I like that one too.
Oh yeah, the first Cav. Yeah, that was.
So,
actually
which one of the recent Army football uniforms would you like to see Coach Alberici maybe bring onto the lacrosse field?
It's hard to beat that year 2017. We were the 10th Mountain Division when it was all white and it snowed. Now, I don't think we'll get any freak snow here at this point up at West Point, but I just love the look of all white, and I'm pretty sure Army Lacrosse is actually maybe they haven't done all white before, but I know we got the white lids now. If we went all white, that could look pretty sharp. That's probably my favorite one.
The thing that I want to end on this. The Patriot League is so good this year. And it would be it is. I mean, you got Colgate, you got Loyola, who's no slouch. You just like you said, BU's always plays Army tough.
Navy's solid.
I want Army to run the table so we get 2 Patriot League teams in the tournament. Like I don't know if they even if they get one loss, like it's almost like they only give one bid because they just love the ACC and Big Ten so much. So
yeah, we got to get away from that as a country. Like stop just giving guys bids because of the name on their jersey.
So you hate the RPI?
Yeah.
Yeah, the RPI. Yeah, the RPI
just flat out.
The RPI hates the Patriot League.
Yeah, well, and I'm tired of all these schools just getting the nod just because they always have.
No, it's fair.
Cons spitting facts, Mitch.
I love it, Cons. Well, appreciate you coming on. Any last words you want to leave Dukes with, and maybe potentially his kids when they watch this one day?
Yeah, Dukes, listen, buddy, don't be afraid. All right, don't be afraid to go against traditional lacrosse storylines and themes, okay? And trust your eyes, because I think you know what good lacrosse looks like. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to say Army's very good. Don't be afraid to say they're not a Cinderella, okay? Don't be afraid.
They will be one of the best teams to ever have a Cinderella story.
Dukes, I thought we were going to end on a nice note here, buddy.
He's still Dukes, you're sticking to it.
I'm sticking to it, Cons. I'm sticking to it.
Well, then maybe I'll just revert back to, Dukes is a little slow and he doesn't know what the word Cinderella
I was one of the
means.
first people to say they'll run the table this year. First one on this podcast.
Okay.
God. We'll see. Cons, thanks for hopping on.
Thanks
Cons.
Appreciate it.
We're going to Q3 of this whole thing, Mitch's Mailbox. Potentially the best segment on the show, one that I'm most excited for. I asked you guys on my Instagram story, what's the most nostalgic lacrosse item that brings back memories, or potentially they should bring back? You guys called the number on the screen and left a voicemail. Again, producer Matty Ice queued them up. We don't know what they are. We're going to give you live reactions. Matty, let's go with the first one.
Hey, boys. Happy to call in again here. Just quickly, Mitch, great to see you bringing the beard back. All my homies love bearded Mitch. Big nostalgia for me is the Rage Cage. There's just something about you and a couple buddies walking down the street to the field, carrying a Rage Cage, a couple balls, and just, having a good time. Kids nowadays don't know what it was like, don't understand it. You don't see them anymore. You just see fields on nets or nets on field.
100%.
I want to bring
People
it back.
have no idea what it was like to go to a turf field and not have a lax net there. Putting that thing on your shoulder, it's in the back of your car, ripping up the back seats. People don't know nowadays.
Dude, I remember trying to ride my bike with it,
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember one time vividly going to goalie training, and I had to bring my coach's Rage Cage on my bike because my mom couldn't drive me, and I had a bike 20 minutes away with the Rage Cage just to play club lacrosse. That's dedication.
I don't know what they had down at Riverside. They got no nets on the field down there in Virginia, but we had nets at Ridgewood High School on that field 24/7. So I honestly didn't I wasn't a big Rage Cage guy, but I will say in my front lawn was a literal lacrosse arena. Me and my dad and my brothers, we would spray paint the field with crease, 2-point MLL line back in the day, 50-yard line. We'd have a net behind. I may have broken my neighbor's windows probably 5 or 6 times, then had to go over and apologize and say sorry for breaking your window for the 4th time. But I mean, a lot of my games are out in the front lawn, so I don't know. Yeah. Rage Cage is
I think now it's pretty cool to see how accessible the sport is, but back in the day, these kids now got no idea.
Back in Garden City, they used to lock up the cages because people used to try to steal them.
Oof.
Really?
I remember St. Paul's, which they lock up some of the goals, so we had to bring the Rage.
You had to know a parent who was coaching, have the key to unlock them.
Right.
But I'll tell you what, it's mint memory back in the day. Rage Cage, mini lax net. just ripping it, you and your boys playing 3x. I mean, you could do that for 5 hours, wake up, not even sore, just do it again.
Yeah.
That's actually, now
miss
that
it.
I'm thinking about it, that's like the funniest thing. That's like the most Garden City thing of all time. Like the biggest crime is stealing lacrosse nets.
Yeah.
Actually, during
They're like,
COVID,
we have got to figure this out.
during COVID at Ohio State, we actually bought a rage cage and would play 3x on top of the parking garage next to our dorm when we weren't allowed to practice or anything. We'd go out there for what, Mitch? 5 hours a day and
just
get like
play.
the biggest sweat in and just play.
Getting reps.
Yeah.
Reps. So we got, all right, producer. Matty Ice, next one.
Pros. Anyone care to lax? Bring back the mid-calf boat shoes, very specifically, in wearing old lacrosse pennies hanging with your boy. Bring it back. Should have never died. Shout out Brantford Winstonburg.
Wow. That's the first lacrosse OG YouTuber right there. Like, we need to get it on the show. Like, what's
Where
he
is
doing
he now? We just
Where
need
is
like a
he now?
"Where is he now" files, but
Yeah.
that guy
Literally
sounded like he was
changed
from
my
my era.
Literally changed my life. Mitch, I know you're probably, you're from Virginia, so you're probably like older than your birth certificate. But like he legitimately changed generations. Like, actually, there'd probably be people out there saying that video set back lacrosse like 10 years.
Might have.
Depending on how you looked at it. But it was
Literally.
so good. I still quote it to my friends sometimes.
And he
Like,
mentioned
that's how good it is.
he mentioned
Anyone
the,
care to lax?
he mentioned the Sperry's. Mitch knows
Yeah.
the Warrior Coxwagons. Those
Oh
things were
my
iconic
God.
back in the day.
And let me catch you guys up to speed real quick. James Hogan, 18 years old, showed up to The Ohio State University in Warrior Coxwagons and mid-calves.
The
Producer Matty Ice, can you pull a picture up for Kevin Dukes? Because I think they have no idea what these are.
For people who don't know,
Imagine showing up. This is like showing up to college in those turf lacrosse slides.
Hey, the Coxwagons are like Warriors' version of trying to make like a lacrosse sport Sperry, basically, is what it was.
This is the. It is. I'm just waiting for Matty to pull these bad boys up
you
because
throw those on after a game. You put on your Coxswains.
And I want you guys to like just look Warrior Coxwagons. That's what they're
Warrior
called.
Cox, like cock, like COCK.
Coxswains,
COX.
Coxwagons. Coxswain.
Coxswain.
I had like 5 pairs of those. Those were the comfiest shoes ever.
Yo, those are gross. You got like,
Imagine he's in college
Did you just
wearing these.
were they only sold at like Lacrosse Unlimited?
Yeah, they had them at Lacrosse Unlimited.
I will say there was a time period in my life, I want to say 7th and 8th grade, where there were Nike turf burns. And I remember like they had like I thought they were the sickest shoes, but they still had like the turf pellets things, right?
Yeah.
Like the bottoms of it.
Yeah.
And I remember going to a sidewalk and cranking so they would go get like flat, and I'd wear them just to school.
Also, the Lacrosse Unlimited
Like
guys. Does
turf
anyone
shoes.
remember the pool slides that said Nike Lacrosse that
Yeah.
they would sell at Lacrosse Unlimited? There was like a couple different colors. I had probably 4 or 5
Those are
pairs of those
legendary.
too over the years.
But I can't get over as an 18-year-old. You're like, oh, let me bring these to college. I think I might have friends.
Lax guy.
That's what someone who has an MLL 2-pointer painted in their front yard would do.
Yeah, those are the slides.
Exactly. That's a lot. That's someone that would have a lacrosse podcast at 24.
Look at the
That's
slides.
what they would have.
Look at the slides. Those things were fantastic. Those slides.
Those slides. Everyone had those slides. Everyone
Yeah.
had those
Come
slides.
on, those are nostalgic.
I will. Also, going back to Brantford Winstonworth, I need to get this line in. Every time LA gets brought up, I always say never been to LA, but I heard it's a chill place.
Yeah,
That was-
100%.
I always drop that.
Nostalgia. I love it. All right, next one, Matty Ice.
Yo, what's up, boys? Moose from Long Island here. Might be known as the Ivy League guy. But my nostalgic little piece that I miss
That's
about
the guy.
lacrosse are Flow Society shorts. Those things were the peak of swag. And just a huge fan of them. Haven't seen them in a minute. So definitely think that's a great piece of nostalgic lax apparel.
Well,
I mean,
Big
those are
Moose,
just classic.
firsthand, thanks for calling in. Moose, we need to continue to have you call back. But Flow Society shorts, producer Matty Ice pulled them up. If you remember, the Pac-Man Flow Society shorts were elite. Those were my favorite ones. But Flow Society shorts, again, was it one of those that helped the sport or hurt the sport?
It helped because that era needed to happen at some point. Like,
Yeah.
it was like a YouTube era where nobody knew what to like do on YouTube. Like everyone knows how to like use YouTube.
This reminds me of like Conbro Trail vibes.
Right, Conbro. Like it was just the perfect Lax Bro era that needed to happen. Even though I understand people like hated it. It was just so funny.
I feel like
you know what the craziest part is too?
Perfect.
Like we went from preppy Vineyard Vines everything to Flow Society.
I feel like Goat USA is the new Flow Society. I feel like in today's day and age.
Yeah, like a little bit more modern.
Yeah. The Flow was crazy though. Does anyone still have theirs in their closet anywhere?
No
How much
way.
do you sell on eBay?
You know what I still wear though around the house is the college lacrosse shorts from Lacrosse Unlimited,
oh my God.
2011 that had like the white, the
Dukes
middle,
and then like the line down the side. Like if it was Notre Dame, it'd be a navy short with the white line and the 2 green on the sides.
Yeah, that's exactly.
And the stickers, like the logo, when you wore them a lot, would like start to peel off after a while. I think I had every single. That was my Christmas present every single year. Was the new college 1 or 2 college team shorts.
My roommate stole mine in college. He's a Notre Dame fan, and he's like, "Those are pretty sick." And I was like, "Yep."
Kev, when did Flow Society shorts come out for you?
Those were a little after my time. I remember when they started popping off though. And like, if your club team had shorts that were kind of like that, like I used to coach club at that time and we would bring extras. I coached a team called South Jersey Shamrocks and everyone wanted our shorts because they looked like that. And so the coaches would bring extras and we'd sell them to kids like from the other team. So
Mitch, how do you think
I always thought it was cringe. Like I would never wear them, but I didn't mind getting an extra $50 every tournament I went to. Selling them.
Yeah.
Alex, how do you think the Frogs would have done in a Flow Society model?
Oh, they would have been elite. They would have been elite.
a Mitchell Pehlke Flow Society collab with the Frog.
The Frog Flow Society shorts. Fans, if you guys want them, comment. We got one more Mitch's mailbox. Matty Ice, let's hit it.
Hey, boys, I heard you're asking for nostalgic lacrosse equipment, and one thing that I haven't thought about in forever is the Easton Raptor helmet. It had some hinges where it could come off halfway between, and you'd suction it to your head. And I think the Powells were in there as well. But as Mitch would say, if you wear it, you're probably a squid. Just wanted to see your guys' thoughts on it.
Yes.
Okay, bye.
You are an absolute squid if you rock that thing. Pop one up on the screen right now. If you rock that thing, it was clinic. Oh my God! Look at that thing. Even with the logo.
Did that thing
with the red? Oh. Who rocked that? Is that an Army picture?
Did it ever make it to a D1 field? I don't even think it did. Because didn't it like break? Didn't a ball like crack it or something?
I do know that. Wasn't it supposed to be like concussion proof?
No, I thought it was supposed to be like the lightest helmet ever.
Yeah, it was. That might be it. I want to say that sounds right. I knew it was either concussion proof or something. No helmet's ever done this before.
Yeah.
And Hogan maybe 6 months.
Had one in hand this past summer, and the big aspect now, it's banned. You can't actually wear it. It's clinically banned. Yeah. And we held it. It is so light.
It's
the
so
fact
light.
that somebody would actually use that as a helmet was kind of crazy.
I remember I played summer league like my sophomore year of college, and some cat rocked it during the game. And it was one of the funniest things. Like the team was wearing like the Rydell 2006 like USA helmet and
the Scotty Rogers Rydell helmet.
Yeah, exactly. the ugliest helmets of all time.
It's funny how like everyone loves to hate on the Warrior and the STX helmets, like the Cascade Hive, I guess you say. When you look at like where lacrosse helmets came from, dude, all the helmets today look so good.
Yeah, they look so good.
By the way, this podcast is expanding deep. That guy sounded like he was from like Alabama or something. On
Texas or something. Yeah.
We're reaching
Did you give a little southern accent on that Alabama?
I thought it was from Alabama on his lazy boy. I don't know.
We're
growing the game, guys. We're growing the game.
Yeah, we're getting worldwide here at Metropolitan Lacrosse. All right, let's hop into Q4. Potentially your guys' favorite segment of this whole show. We got start, bench, cut. Again, Hoagie, Kev, Dukes, they don't know what I'm about to ask them. So I want raw reactions. Kev, let's start with you. We're going to go iconic college lacrosse special edition uniforms. So these aren't like, typical home and away jazz. It's a special edition. We've probably only seen once or twice out of these teams. Syracuse Volt, Navy NASA, Johns Hopkins throwbacks. What are you picking? And I'm talking like the throwbacks that we saw like, Shaq Stanwyck era wear.
Okay.
Start, bench, cut, go.
All right, this is crazy. I don't know where you're going to stand on this and how you guys are going to react, but I think I got to cut the Syracuse Volt.
Wow.
Yeah. Dude, just not. I know they were popular, but just like it's just not in the color scheme of Syracuse, and I think that's just it doesn't fit for me. And it looks back when you look back on it, it looks the weirdest. I'm gonna bench the Hopkins throwbacks. I love when any team wears throwbacks, and I love in lacrosse especially like when they do like the faux leather gloves or like the helmet stickers that make it look like an old bucket helmet. And then I got to go with the Navy NASA special uniforms because one, I support the troops, unlike some people on this podcast, and red, white, and blue. It just looks fresh. And I don't know if you're going to show the picture, Matty Ice, that you're showing right now, but that visor right now, like it just brings it all together for me.
All right. Start bench cut. There it is. James, let's go with you next.
I've been wrestling with this in my head ever since you announced it. I think for me, I'm going to start the 𝐓𝐄 Volt just because they're just that iconic. They're probably the most iconic college lacrosse alternate uniform. Actually, no, they're not. They're not. They are the most iconic college lacrosse special edition uniform of all time. Those were once in a generation. When you saw those, not only were they sick on the field, but they started a complete trend in the world of lacrosse. Yeah. Everything that summer, Volt lacrosse had, Volt strings, Volt cleats, everything was Volt on the summer circuit that summer. So for that alone, starting that trend, I'm starting the 𝐓𝐄 Volt. I'm going to bench the Hopkins throwbacks. I love the nostalgia that Hopkins brought them back. I love the addition of the gloves. The helmet looked great on that level of helmet. I don't think the stickers of the old school bucket look as great on the new, XRSs and stuff. I think they look great on the buckets back in the day when they were on Pro 7s. There was more space for stickers, but I also just love the uniform that they wore. I thought it was super clean. Hopkins with the stuff on the sleeves. And then I'm going to cut the Navy NASA uniforms. I love the uniforms. They're really cool. I just technically think they could have done a little bit more with that uniform, but it's a tough one. They're all fantastic uniforms. I wish and I hope Army and Navy moving forward for their games every year kind of do what football do and just come up with a special uniform.
They've been doing that, though. They've been doing that.
Army hasn't, though, but Navy has.
Am I crazy to say that during that Navy promo for the NASA uniforms, they legitimately went into the water and walked out?
That might have been for football.
Yeah, they might have.
I don't know.
Because that's going to depend for me for if it's what I'm thinking. I think they might have done it for football, Hoagie. But I'm going to bench the NASA uniforms because you were obviously talking about who hates the troops, Kev. You're referring to Hoagie, of course.
I love the troops.
Everyone was thinking that. Obviously from this whole podcast.
I'm the biggest troops guy.
I would say this. Yeah, I'm a troops guy. But I don't think that anybody could be a bigger Volt guy than me. The Volt era really holds such a place in my heart. Of little white kids on Long Island really thinking that they were going to look faster wearing the Volts because they're like lacrosse limited sales reps would be like, you're going to look faster in this. And it's like, no, you're not, but you're going to look hilarious on the circuit. And I'll never forget Joe Von Miller, number 23 for Syracuse, rocking those jerseys. Such an iconic memory for me. And then I'm going to bench the Hopkins throwbacks. I think throwbacks are kind of cheap. I think even Ohio State did throwbacks are going to be sick. Notre Dame did throwbacks are going to be sick. I think any school that does throwbacks is going to be cool. I think that the Volt and the NASA is at least a little something different.
Yeah, I think it just depends what you like more. Do you like the Hopkins throwback where
coming for you?
Yeah, sorry.
The people hated that take.
Do you like the new school Navy NASA uniforms, which are new and cool, or do you like when you see the Hopkins throwback? Think about obviously we're too young, but how many national championships were won in that uniform? How many legendary players have worn that uniform in the past? So for people who've watched that through the years, I think that's really cool to see that come back.
The Baltimore 100%. Police just heard me absolutely chirp the Hopkins jerseys. And now they're going to Mitch's to turn.
I might be up there with dudes on one of the biggest Volt guys. I'm a huge Volt guy. I had this Jazz back in the day. Shout out Derek Moltz, one of my best friends, Danny Moltz. Brother played on 𝐓𝐄 during this era. And I remember he came home that summer with a duffel bag full of lax gear, being able to hold that Pro 7 Volt helmet in my hand. I'm like, this is unreal. So that's the start for me. I'm actually going to bench the Hopkins throwback. I think the biggest thing was, I'm going to bench Navy, and then I'm going to cut Hopkins. I will get back to Navy. Hopkins, I don't think that jersey fits with a throwback. I don't know if it's the picture, the image, but it needs to be porthole mesh. And I feel like they're trying to do this on a regular jersey. But I absolutely love the helmet. I don't love the old leather looking gloves on like New Era, Nike, gloves. And then bench Navy. I just think it's too clean in the visor, and you could tell my man did 100 push-ups before the photo shoot, 100%.
Mitch, you're totally right too. I thought from afar that it was Porthole, which almost made me go Hopkins. But the fact that it's not is almost disgusting.
Well, that photo, by the way, that photo I think was pre-Porthole era in lacrosse. Like that was that Stanwyck era. What was that?
2013?
Pre-Porthole.
What do you mean?
Yeah, dude, Porthole was like the 80s and the 90s.
I mean
Pehlke was rocking Porthole.
I mean pre-Porthole, like coming back. Like it didn't start coming. It didn't start coming back until 2019 when Towson really debuted it, the throwbacks. So at that era, no one had the Porthole. It wasn't back yet.
Should have never, ever left lacrosse, by the way.
Yeah, 100%. All right, well, that's going to wrap up episode 7. Dukes, can you give the fans a sign out and tell them where they can view next episode?
TLN YouTube. Follow us at the lacrosse.show. Follow Hoagie. Give out your Twitter right now. Let the people follow you. You've been great for lacrosse Twitter.
Follow me on Twitter at James_HoganV. You'll see some takes on there. So been letting it fly.
Hoagie's been a great addition to lacrosse Twitter.
I appreciate it.
And if you guys want Mitch Pehlke, let me know.
Nobody does.
No.
If you want to unfollow Mitch Pehlke, where can they unfollow?
Follow me, Dukes, and Kev. Unfollow Mitch Pehlke on Twitter.
We'll see you guys next Wednesday at 9. Peace.